I was very blessed this year that I got to have a unique role in this 8th grade class's life insofar as that I taught them first semester religion. None of the other priests were able to do that the way that I was able to. Father Joe obviously taught them all second semester every day, every Wednesday, and then Monsignor and Father Luke obviously would have probably interacted with them in class over the last several years, but the day in and day out of teaching them is a unique experience that most priests don't get to experience, especially with an 8th grade class. Maybe sometimes for high school students, but not very much for 8th graders. And so I'm blessed because of that. I loved every second of it. I had a really great time. I felt truly blessed to have that opportunity. I wish I could have done both semesters, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. So I'm grateful that I got to know your students as well as I did. And it was an awesome time. And it's kind of funny to go in between the two classes. Obviously, they then kind of shuffled the deck a little bit second semester, or whatever it's called when they come back now from Christmas break, second unit or whatever it's called. Anyway, and you kind of get to see the ups and downs of a variety of different things, right? Some days, one particular student might be on the top of the world in joy, and the next day their teenage hormones have gotten the best of them, and they're a total terror in class. But you get to see the highs and the lows, and it's awesome. There was one class that particularly stood out in my mind that I've actually put a lot of thought into since that class happened, and it was probably within the first month of the semester. And so when I was asked by your pastors if I would be willing to say the Mass and preach, I almost essentially immediately knew what I would want to talk about, because this class stood out to me so much. I'm also not going to say which class it was or which students were involved, so you can wonder, was it my class or not? We were in a class, and there was a couple of students that were particularly having a tough day. And one of them made the comment that essentially that the world is coming to an end, right? In a way, I get it, right? There's a worldwide pandemic going on, even into whatever that would have been like September. There was still a lot of fear of what could be or what might be. So I, in a certain sense, get it. And so we kind of had a discussion about this in class. Are things really the worst ever right now? Or are they actually an opportunity? Right? Do I have to look at it in the most negative way possible, or should I look at it differently? I feel like I'm at the very tail end of a group of generations that were just simpler. I didn't have a cell phone until I was in college, and I wish every day that I could break my cell phone and go without it again. I hate having a cell phone. Other than taking emergency calls, I hate being so easily accessible. Right? But these young people have them constantly. And they think that they're like hiding it in class. Oh, they don't know that I'm on my cell phone. And I'm like, it's because you're so quiet right now that I'm not stopping you from being on your cell phone. But when I was a kid, when I was probably in 4th grade, 5th grade, my parents were divorced at this point, and my mom had already lived in this neighborhood for quite some time. My dad was moved around a little bit. But on the weekends, I'd be with my mom, and almost every Saturday morning, I'd get up at whatever time. I'd eat some cereal, I'd watch the Power Rangers, and I'd say to my mom, "All right, Mom, I'll be back later." And she would say, "Make sure you're home by dinner time." And I would get on my bike and I would ride like 2 miles away. She had only, because those weren't my school friends, they were just the kids from the neighborhood. She didn't know those kids very well. She certainly didn't know their parents. She probably maybe had a phone number to call if she needed to, but she also just kind of hoped for the best. And I got home and she'd say, "What'd you do today?" And I gave the same answer that your kids would say, "Nothing." But we were getting in trouble and breaking stuff. Like we could have got picked up by the police probably. But I just got on my bike and I rode a couple miles. My mom had no idea what I was doing all day long. Well, I could have got to my friend's house. We could have gone to another friend's house, maybe even a third friend's house. And that's just not the case anymore. Right? I bet all the parents here have tracking devices on their kids' phones, and you know where your kid is all the time because you also know they're never going to leave that phone. Kids are such suckers, man. You let them control you like that. I didn't have that as a kid, and I feel blessed because of it. I had some freedom, and I was able to kind of grow in joy just because I didn't necessarily know what was going to happen. I taught high school just for 1 year a few years ago, and this was the first time I'd heard this concept, but I had not seen it yet. They called parents helicopter parents when I was in high school. When I was teaching high school just a few years ago, they became bulldozer parents. And anytime something happened, whatever it might be, how obvious it was that it was the kid's fault or not, it was always the teacher's fault. And you were going to get emails and death threats and voicemails and all this stuff until you admitted, that was totally my fault, that your kid stole that thing and then broke that window. Right? That was not the case when I was a kid. When I was a kid, if I did something, if my teacher called home and said whatever it was, I knew that I was in trouble, and my dad was never going to take my thoughts on it. He did not care what my thoughts were on it. I was the only one at fault. Even if the teacher said, no, it was someone else's fault, he was just involved, it was all my fault. But because of that, like I had a certain level of joy because I got to dictate some things about my life, and I got to have a certain level of freedom. So I in a little sense understand where those students might be thinking that, right? The world is coming to an end, that everything is bad. I mean, let's be honest. You didn't get to have a lot of things your 8th grade year, 8th graders. Right? You didn't get to have probably a class trip the way that every other class got to. You didn't get to have class picnics, I don't know what that other word was, picnics the way the other class got to. You didn't get to have those fun things that every other class for generations have got to do, and you didn't. So in one sense, you're kind of justified in being frustrated by that. It's not right. It shouldn't be the case. But it is. It is the case you didn't get those things. It is the case that you were cheated out of some things. It is the case that your school year was very different. It is the case that you had to go the last half of the first semester, or last half of first semester and the first half of second semester from home, like no other student had ever done in all their life. You were cheated out of some things, and you have a right to be upset. Today, the church celebrates Saint Bede the Venerable, a very well-known saint. In our diocese, we actually have a high school named after him, Saint Bede in Peru, Illinois. And Saint Bede had almost a similar childhood as you all. There was a worldwide pandemic that broke out. I don't know if it's worldwide. There was a pandemic that broke out in his area, and more than half the population died. He entered the monastery at a very young age, was ordained a deacon at like 18. Right? He made solemn promises to Almighty God at the age of 18, which is not that far away from some of you. And he was stuck in the monastery then for pretty much the rest of his life because of all the diseases that were going on around. He wrote more books than any other saint at that time, at least. He saw it as an opportunity. He wasn't put down by the stuff that was going on in the world that was unfair. He saw it as, what am I going to do now? How am I going to better the world because of it? What am I going to do with this time now? It wasn't, look what I go without, it's look what I get to do. 8th graders, the rest of the world for your lifetime is not going to look the same as it was when I was a kid. So I can say, woe is me and everything is awful, or I can say, let's do it. Let's go into it head first. Let's recklessly go into it. Let's see what amazing things I can do instead. Don't be without joy. Right, we hear it in the first reading, rejoice in the Lord always. St. Paul says, I say it again, rejoice. Be with joy. When I choose to be with joy, I'll live a different life than those who settle for frustration or anger or bitterness. Think of the most inspiring people that you've ever met, whether it's your parents, an aunt or uncle, a friend, a priest, a religious, a teacher, whoever it might be. Were they not joyful? We don't get inspired by people who are upset. We don't get inspired by people who say, woe is me. We get inspired by people who see the opportunity in life and take it. I think sometimes also we struggle to see our life in the broader context. I don't know if you've ever asked yourself, where would I fall in the world, right? What does my life look like in comparison to the world? There was a guy who, I mentioned this weekend if you happen to be here this weekend, who used to send me emails all the time. If there was a ministry for forwarding emails, he would be like the president of that group. And so I got emails from this guy constantly. He was an older guy. The reason why I looked up some of these emails was because he passed away a couple weeks ago, so he's been on my mind of some of the ridiculous emails I got. Truly ridiculous. Maybe some of your parents or grandparents do the same. If you do, well, never mind. So this guy sent me emails constantly, and so I looked up some of them. He sent me one that was, if you shrunk the world proportionally to 100 people and put them on an island, what that island would look like. So again, there's 8 billion people-ish. If we shrunk that down proportionally to 100 people and put them on an island, what would that look like? I want to read it for you. If we reduce the world's population proportionally to 100 people, 57 of those 100 people would come from Asia, 21 from Europe, 14 would come from North and South America, 8 from Africa. 51 of them would be women, and 49 would be men. 70 of them would be non-Christian, and 30 would be Christian. 68 out of 100 people would not be able to read or write. How do you see the world? 68% of the people in the world cannot read or write. 6 of those 100 people would own more than half of the world's money. All 6 would be U.S. citizens. 3 of those 6 people would live on the same street in Long Island, New Jersey. 1 of those 100 people would be just about to be born, and 1 of those 100 people would be just about to die. Only 1 of those 100 people would have been to college. How do you see the world? Maybe in your neighborhood, everyone goes to college. But on planet Earth, only 1 in 100 go to college. How do you see the world? Because the way that we see the world determines the way that we're going to live our life. And the way we live our lives determines the joy that we're going to have. 1/3 of the world's population is dying from lack of bread. 2 billion people are hungry today just for bread. By the way, I hope you had a fantastic dinner tonight. How do you see the world? Because the way that we see the world determines the way that we live our lives. I want you to raise your hand for this. I want you to raise your hand, not just the 8th graders, but everyone. Raise your hand if there is food in your fridge at home. Okay. Keep your hands up. If there's food in your fridge at home, keep your hand up. Please, God, answer yes to this. If there are clothes on your back right now, keep your hand up. If there's a roof over your head now and when you go home, keep your hand up. If you have a place to sleep tonight, keep your hand up. If your hand is raised right now, you are better off than 75% of the world. You can put your hands down. If you have some food to eat, some clothes on your back, a roof over your head, and a place to sleep, you are more wealthier than 75% of the whole world. How do you see the world? Because it will determine how you live your life. I think there's 2 things that oftentimes people forget in their pursuit of happiness. What people are made for and what things are made for. People are made to be loved, and things are made to be used. but very frequently in 2021, we love things and we use people. Do you want the joy of St. Paul that he's talking about here? Do you want this love that Jesus is talking about in the gospel? Learn to love more than to use. Ask yourself, how do I see the world? Am I seeing the world and how it owes me something, or how I'm going to go above and beyond no matter what's going on, what disease is affecting those around me, what illness is going on, what worldwide thing is happening? I'm going to choose to respond with joy. I'm going to choose to not let it get me down. I'm going to choose to become my best anyway. How do you see the world, 8th graders? You are not the future. You're the present. We don't need you in 20 years. We need you now. Live an uncommon life, and you'll experience greater joys than the world can promise.